أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون أولئك أصحاب الجنة خالدين فيها جزاء بما كانوا يعملون. Verses 13 and 14 of Surah Al-Ahqaf, the 46th chapter of the Quran. Those who say our Lord is Allah and then remain steadfast, they will have no fear nor will they grieve. They shall be the inhabitants of paradise, remaining in it forever, a reward for what they used to do. Recite the second salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now clearly this salawat is not the salawat of Muharram and Safar. This during a very long summer, right? As it gets closer and closer to the end, you're waiting for that Eid al-Fitr, right? So usually this is the salawat we get at those times. So let's show our love and let's express our love for the Abu Abdullah al-Hussein by reciting a perfect salawat, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal. And let's recite a fourth salawat in the honor of Imam of Time, Imam al-Asr wal-Zaman, Hajjalallah ta'ala farajahu sharif. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal. And let's not forget all the marhumin and marhumat, mu'mineen and mu'minat, by reciting your loudest of salawat, followed by Surah Al-Fatiha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen for giving us this opportunity and this bounty to participate in the majlis of Imam al-Hussein. And inshallah we'll ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to, number one, accept this majalis from us. Number two, give us the tawfiq to actually do a ziyarat of Imam al-Hussein. Number three, place Imam al-Hussein as our shafi' in the hereafter. And inshallah, number four, we'll ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive all of our past sins due to the rights and the sacrifices in which Imam al-Hussein actually made. We started a series of topics talking about an analysis of why Imam al-Hussein actually made his move, what were some of the messages that he actually carried through, and how we can be part of that message of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein in our time, given the current circumstances that we are in. Now today, it's a very special day. It has been announced as a day in which we're going to commemorate the demise or the martyrdom of Lady Zainab salamullah alayha. So let's try to make a connection between how Lady Zainab was able to carry this message of Ashura, right, despite of the most severe circumstances in which she was actually placed and put into. So we can learn quite a lot from Lady Zainab, right? Meaning that, if you just label her as the only and the true messenger of Ashura, we probably have not gone wrong about it, right? So when we take a look at the history of Lady Zainab salamullah alayha, is very interesting. Because typically when we talk about noble families, right, usually the very first thing that comes to mind is like whoever is closer to a noble family has more of the goodies and more of a luxurious life for themselves, right? So that's the typical, thought that it comes to mind. But in the story of the Ahlul Bayt, in the story of the best people on the entire creation, this entire image becomes vice versa, it becomes upside down, right? And that's why they say the more closer you get, in a way, you get more of the tests and calamities, right? And inshallah we'll point out to it. So when we take a look at Lady Zainab salamullah alayha's life, we see that from every beginning of her lifetime, she was going through so many different tests and so many different calamities, so many different difficulties, right? That, if you just start counting those, I don't think we will actually reach an ending point. right? Because everything that happened to her, you can take it from different aspects, right? And you can continue adding up to that list. So I don't know how many numbers would it be in terms of statistics if you want to just run in statistics on her life of counting how many different problems she actually had to face, and she actually had to go through and tolerate, right? So let's start from the beginning, and we just breathe through some of the historical point, and inshallah we get to the point of the movement of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and how she was still able to carry the message of Imam Hussein despite of that severe circumstance. So when we look back at her history, right, we see that from day one that she was born, her birth was included with the tears of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How did it happen? When Lady Zainab was actually born, right, Amir al-Mu'mineen comes to actually pay a visit to Lady Fatima al-Zahra, right? And as they're holding Lady Zainab in their arms, right, they go to Rasulullah, right, for this process of naming the newborn. So when they hand Lady Zainab to Rasulullah, Rasulullah embraces her, and he gives her a kiss on the side of her face, and he starts crying, but he starts crying so loud that they say actually the tears of Rasulullah roll down from his eyes all the way to his beard. So when he does this, Lady Fatima al-Zahra turns around and asks him, like, "Oh father, is there something wrong with Lady Zainab? Is there something wrong with this newborn, right? How come are you crying so hard on a day in which everybody tends to celebrate? When you're blessed with a new child, we tend to celebrate. We tend to give, the sweets, and we tend to invite others for ta'am and for food, right? So how come you're crying on this, blessed day?" Rasulullah turns around and tells her, "Oh my dear daughter, right? The reason that I'm crying is for what is about to happen with her in the years in which nor you are there, neither am I," right? And he starts telling her what will happen, right? So we have it in that narration that Lady Fatima al-Zahra starts to cry as well. At the end, she asks a very interesting, question. She says, "Oh father, what's the reward? What's the sawab of those who actually cry and mourn for Lady Zainab salamullah alayh?" Rasulullah turns around and tells her that, "My dear daughter, whoever mourns and cries for Lady Zainab salamullah alayha, he or she will have the reward of crying and mourning for Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba and Imam al-Hussein alayhimus salam." So you put two of the ma'asumeen, two of the imams together, and you mourn for both of them. The reward of that is for the person who actually cries and mourns for Lady Zainab salamullah alayha. So this is just the reward of mourning for her, right? So this is the first part of the story. So as we go along, right, we see that at the very early ages, she becomes orphan, right? At the age of 6, she loses her mother. So imagine that at the age of 6, now the only supporter that you have in the entire city of Medina, you will lose her. A little bit later, right? So now from now on, we see this stronger connection between Lady Zainab and her father Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam. And this connection starts to grow and grow even more and more, right? On the side of this, we see the connection that she has with Abu Abdullah al-Hussein specifically. We have so many riwayah in which Lady Fatima al-Zahra talks about the connection which exists between Lady Zainab and Imam al-Hussein. They say in one of them that, it was to a point that even when she was a child, right, as long as she would see Imam al-Hussein around, she would sense the presence of Imam al-Hussein around in the house, she would keep quiet. But the second she would feel that Imam al-Hussein has left the room or left the house, she would start to cry. And we have it that, Lady Fatima al-Zahra, brings this point, to Rasulullah as well. It's like, I'm a little bit concerned about how much Lady Zainab is connected to Abu Abdullah Hussein. Then again, we have it that Rasulullah tells Lady Fatima al-Zahra that don't worry, this is absolutely natural. It is because of the time, it is because of the mission, it is because of the path that they have, and how, they're going to continue on this tragedy of Karbala. So we see these strong connections in terms of being extremely connected to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. And where does this stuff comes to play? When we actually go to the day of Ashura. Because inshallah we'll talk about the different characters of Lady Zainab salamullah alayha. And it's very interesting that, no matter how much we try to put it in terms of a sense or logic, we cannot make sense out of it. How can it be possible for a woman, for a lady, to go through so much, yet be able to manage it so well, right? So inshallah, we'll get to it a little by little. But before that, this whole topic of calamities, this whole topic of difficulties, of problems, right? It's something that we go through it as well. It's not only for the Ahlul Bayt. It's not only for specific people, right? Rather, it's something that is inevitable. We say no matter who the person is, this topic of going through difficulties in life, it will exist for them as well, meaning that they will go through these difficulties as we speak of, the ups and downs of life. So now, what's the difference when it comes to a person who actually claims to be a believer and a person who is not, right? You say, first of all, why do we have to talk about this topic of going through the difficulties of life? As I mentioned, it's inevitable. We're dealing with it on every day, basically, right? And number two, we have to say, how can we manage these difficulties in which we actually go through in our lifetime, right? Then we have to talk about this topic of being patient and being tolerant in terms of going through these difficulties, which is, we know is going to come to us sooner or later. It's a very interesting hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, in which, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Again, the salawats reminds me of the month of Ramadan, somewhere out in the blue. So let's recite the salawat again. In which Amir al-Mu'mineen is sitting, in his house. One of the companions comes to pay him a visit. When he comes to actually see Amir al-Mu'mineen, right, as he's about to sit down on a chair, the second he sits down on the chair actually breaks down. He falls on the ground, and his forehead hits like a side of the chair which was broken, right? So it starts bleeding pretty bad. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam himself, he gets up, he starts wiping out the wound, and then he puts this bandage, this cloth over the wound, right? And then he uses some of his saliva on the wound, right? And then immediately that wound, heals up. Then he turns around and he tells the companion, he says, "Do you know why this happened?" He says, "No, Amir al-Mu'mineen, I don't know what happened." He says that's the reason, that's the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives difficulties to a mu'min. It is to actually wash away some of the sins or some of the mistakes that they have done. Then the companion starts thinking, it's like, "Oh, Amir al-Mu'mineen, would you tell me more? What did I do, right, that I deserve to actually be punished in this way, right?" Amir al-Mu'mineen tells them that the only thing you forgot to do was you forgot to actually say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim before taking a seat on that chair. Saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that's something we say is mustahab, right? So imagine if forgetting about a mustahab act is going to have such a result. So what happens if the person actually becomes a sinner, right? So here comes this question. It's we see so many people, they call themselves Muslims, they call themselves even the followers of the school of the Ahlul Bayt, and we know they make a lot of mistakes. So how come none of this stuff happens? What's the answer for that one? We say a lot of du'as we do, a lot of good deeds we do, a lot of random sadaqas we do, every good act that we do, right? A lot of them actually goes in this path of actually defending us or protecting us against all of the stuff which actually has to happen to us, right? We may not realize it, we may not recognize it, but that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually doing. He's extending His mercy, right? He's taking all of the good stuff that we do, and then He's just again, protecting us from the reactions of all the bad acts that we have done without we even noticing it. So this topic of, for example, if I be good for a specific amount of time, then I start feeling or start sensing this sense of expectation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just goes out of the picture, right? Meaning that no matter how hard we try, we still have a long way to go, right? Because at the same time, we're making so many mistakes, and a lot of times we are not, very well aware of it. So that's just one example of these difficulties in which it happens in the moment, right? And then interesting, the more or the stronger in terms of the belief the person becomes, the stronger will be the test and those difficulties. It's not vice versa, right? I cannot say if I become a true mu'min, if I become this 100% believer, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to test me at all. It's actually opposite, right? They say whoever Allah loves the most will actually test him or her the most. We can just see that in the life of the Ahlul Bayt and the life of Rasulullah, right? So the severeness of the test in which they go through, right? It's just out of the question. So Lady Zainab salamullah alayha doesn't fall far from that tree as well. So we take a look at her life. We go back to the tragedy of Karbala. We see her personality can be actually analyzed in at least 4 different stages. Before the tragedy of Karbala, from the time or from the day of Ashura till the time that she goes and actually enters the palace of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, from Kufa all the way to Sham and in the majlis of Yazid. We see that these 4 stages, right? And after that, some say 5, like, the 5th stage is when they actually go back to Karbala and then they return to Medina. Because as you all know, she actually gets sent, she gets sent to an exile when she was in Medina, and I will get to that as well, right? So these 5 different stages, we see that she actually plays a different role in every one of these stages. If you want to start from the day of Ashura all the way to the time that the caravan enters the palace of Ibn Ziyad, we can see that how great she plays her role in 3 different responsibilities. Number 1, which is the most important one, is to protect the life of the Imam of her time, which is Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wassalam. You guys know the history, right? As they're about to move the caravan through this Wad of Qatlegah, through this the place where all the martyrs and all the shuhadars are laying down. So all the women and children, they go after the body of a shaheed. Everybody goes after their beloved one. Then we have it that the way they had tied up Imam Sajjad on the camel, right, on the camel without the saddle, it was that he could not move his face, meaning that they had tied him up to a camel in a way that he was only facing one direction. Imagine, for example, to the right. So he could not move his neck to the left, right? He could only see one side. And on purposely, right, they moved the camel in a way that he could move in a way that he could only see, right, where the Qatlegah was. So as they're moving the camel, Imam is looking at the bodies of Shuhada, and he cannot do anything. He cannot move any part of his body. He's chained to the camel, right? So then we have it that Lady Zainab immediately, acknowledges like what's going on with Imam al-Sajjad. She actually hastens back towards Imam al-Sajjad and tells him, like, what are you doing, oh son of Rasulallah? The amount of pain, the amount of suffering was so high that she could sense that as if like the spirit of Imam al-Sajjad is about to depart from his body. So she goes and she takes a stand in front of Imam al-Sajjad, make sure that he would not see at least this scenery of the Qatlegah, of how the bodies are laying there without the kafan, without any proper burial, how the bodies have been trampled over by the horses. That's the very first responsibility of her, right? And then after that, looking after all of these women and children. Those who have gone in groups to ziyarah, those who have gone camping, those who have gone to different road trips with a lot of women and children, and a lot of groups, they know it's hard, right? If everybody just wants a glass of water, you constantly have to go run back and forth, right? Now imagine at that situation in which they could not run anyway. At the eve of Ashura, let's think about it. Let's go to that time. What was happening? We know it's a desert, right? So at desert, usually at nighttime, the weather becomes very cool and chilly in a sense, right? So everybody's trying to find a fire in order to find, to heat themselves up, to warm themselves up, right? Now you see that all these kids, they have a couple of different options. They can either just run for it, go towards the deserts and just run in the dark, or they have to go back towards the light. But where the light is remained within those guards. And we know how are they going to treat these children, right? So now again, Lady Zainab has to come and has to bring all of these kids together and make sure that she keeps count on every single one of them. They continue, they go, and then they enter the city of Kufa. So once they enter the city of Kufa, now it's the first time that actually Lady Zainab can express what had happened, right? So we have it that as they enter the Kufa, right, the minute she starts speaking to the people of Kufa, right, a lot of women, kids, and even the guys of the Kufa, they started crying. So Lady Zainab tells them, it's like, if you guys are crying, if you guys are mourning for us, then who killed us? You kill us and then you mourn for us before we even speak, right? Trying to reason with them. I was like, what's going on with you guys? You guys still haven't got the message of Ashura yet. Then she goes and she enters the palace of Ibn Ziyad. And Ibn Ziyad, he's the most tyrant, ruler, right? He's like, so like, in a sense, like crazy that a lot of people are afraid of even talking to him. When we take a look at the movement of Ashura, before Ibn Ziyad actually goes to Kufa, people were waiting and expecting Imam al-Hussein to come by, right? But then what happens that they actually open up the gates for Ibn Ziyad. They say when Ibn Ziyad gets informed of the move of Imam al-Hussein, right? He starts leaving Basra towards Kufa on the very same night, and he goes to Kufa non-stop, right? On the path, he just changes his horse and he continues to go non-stop towards Kufa. Meaning that nobody was expecting to see Ibn Ziyad at the gates of Kufa. And that's the element of surprise in which he uses to actually go to Darul Imara. Imagine you're not expecting somebody like Ibn Ziyad, and all of a sudden there is a knock on the door, you open the door and boom, there is Ibn Ziyad standing near with a couple of guards. And he was known as being this cruel ruler. He absolutely had no mercy in a sense. He could easily kill people without, any hesitation. Now you go to that palace, he's sitting there, he's sitting on his, throne. He's has all his commanders, all his, guards and soldiers around him, all of this politicians, everybody's lined up, right? And he's sitting there as if he's the most victorious person of all time. Now they bring the caravan of the Ahlul Bayt. In which form? Allahu A'lam. So we have it in Maghatil that he spots Lady Zainab among all the women and children, right? And purposely he points out Lady Zainab and says, "How did you find the work of Allah in which was done to your brother and to your family?" Right? He tried to uses this excuse in a sense, this justification, putting everything on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And where does this start? This has a long history. This sense of this type of justification in which that, we put everything and we relate everything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning that I didn't do anything. It was the will of Allah that it happened, right? Let me give you an interesting story if you recite aloud salawat. Allah. So at the time of the second Khalif, right? One day he's walking alone with Ibn Abbas, right? So he starts talking to Ibn Abbas. He tells him, "Oh, Ibn Abbas, I do not see Ali ibn Abi Talib often these days." That was the time of his Khilafah. I do not see him that often. He's not, basically he's not coming to us. He's not sending his regards. He's not saying his salams to us. What's going on with him, right? Ibn Abbas looks at him and says, "You know where the problem is. What's the reason for it." And then, the second Khalif turns around and he tells him, he thinks for a second, and he turns around and he tells Ibn Abbas that, this is not something that we have planned for. He uses the same reasoning. This is something that Allah has actually willed for it to happen. Meaning that, if this Khilafah was rightfully, for Amir al-Mu'mineen, now we see that the Khilafah has been given to someone else, right? So now this actuality of the Khilafah being given to someone else, it proves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually content with it. Otherwise, it would not happen. Look at how great he goes about this. It's because it happened, right? It's the will of Allah. It doesn't talk about, through which mean and through what action it happened. It only talks about the outcome of it. It says when it happened, that indicates that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has actually willed for it, right? He's content with it. Therefore, there is nothing to be, sad about. There's nothing to be worried about, right? Rather, we have to be content about what happened. The very same reasoning happened or was used by Ibn Ziyad. When he sees the caravan, when he sees Lady Zainab, he turns around and he tells her, "How did you find the work of Allah being done to your brother and your family?" So the minute he tries to use the same reasoning, right? Lady Zainab gets up and she replies very firmly. Imagine on that place, right? "Ma ra'aytu illa jamila." Meaning that when you're talking about Allah's creation, Allah's work, Allah's will, "Ma ra'aytu illa jamila." Right? From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing except beauty and mercy. Nothing, it gets manifested, right? But then she continues, but through which means, right? Bottom line, there are these means in the process, right? We cannot avoid the will of the rulers, of the guards, of the soldiers, of all of those swords and spears and arrows. No, all of it is there. We cannot just justify it and say because it happened, so it has the contentment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this reasoning interesting. You can see it in every part of the history of Islam. In all of the Umayyads Khalifs, in all of the Abbasis Khalif, right? Every time they would do an oppressive act, they would use the same reasoning. They would say if Allah didn't want it, it would not have happened, right? They always try to justify their own act using the very same reasoning. And we see that, the Ahlul Bayt, the progeny of Rasulullah, they tend to actually take a very firm stand, against this way of thinking. That no, we cannot avoid this topic of free will that we have. And how are we going to spend it? Now, let's go back and let's focus on Lady Zainab Salamullah alayha. So, the very first thing we learn from her is this courage, right? Now, this question comes up to play is like, how come she actually, started giving the sermon at the palace of Ibn Ziyad when we know that all of these na-mahrams were there, right? So sometimes we talk about this, that, this topic of mahram and na-mahram. So how come Lady Zainab Salamullah alayha came out and started giving this speech right there, right in front of Ibn Ziyad? What's the answer for that one? We say when an oppressive act happens, when zulm happens, right? It's sometimes personal, but sometimes it reflects the society, right? Take an example of Lady Fatima Zahra, right? We don't see any sermons from her except for the time of Fadak. And when we talk about Fadak, it's not just a garden. It's not like a personal, capital, or it's not in terms of the monetary stuff, right? Because when you look at the sermon of Fadak, you can see that, Lady Fatima Zahra doesn't talk about the benefits of Fadak. She's talking about the topic of Velayat, right? So meaning that when an oppressive act comes to a plane in which it reflects the society, right? Then it becomes mandatory, it becomes wajib, it becomes obligatory on all the people of the society who realize that this is an oppressive act, to take a stand for it, against it, right? So at this time when Lady Zainab Salamullah alayha enters the palace of Ibn Ziyad, and we know Ibn Ziyad doesn't give any chance to anybody, right? There is absolutely no one else to stand up and actually make this defense and, actually show and express what actually happened, right? And we know Imam al-Sajjad at that time, he was pretty sick, right? So now it becomes a duty for Lady Zainab Salamullah alayha to take that stand and show her support for this haq, for this truth. So what do we learn from this one? That no matter in which position we are, we always have to have this, level of acknowledging what is the truth and what is haq. And once we realize it, we have to take a stand with it. We cannot just let it go. When stuff becomes difficult or more difficult, we cannot just say, oh, okay, this is as far as I go, right? Very, very simple, stuff. Like a lot of times we get a lot of this prejudice, right? About just being a Muslim, about being a Shia, about being like a follower of the school of the Ahlul Bayt. You cannot just easily give up on those. No, it's actually vice versa. We have to become more stronger and stronger, right? Remember, the stronger the belief, the stronger the tests. The stronger or the closer we get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more of the test we're going to get in this dunya. This is again inevitable, right? There is a hadith by, I think, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam, in which he says that the mu'min, a believer, right? It's like a weighting, like a scale, right? The heavier the faith of a believer becomes, right? The heavier of the tests and calamities and the difficulties in life. Right? So it's exactly opposite of a lot of people, of what a lot of people may actually assume. It's like, okay, if I be a good Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give me a lot of bounties. Yes, He will give you a lot of bounties. But those bounties doesn't necessarily mean the goodies in which the people are talking about in this dunya. Right? It's actually opposite, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He keeps all of those bounties for you in a way that will be everlasting. He doesn't want to give you something that will be short term. The short-term stuff He gives to those who only believe in the short-term outcomes. But He keeps all those, luxurious bounties that you want, and He tries to give it to you in an everlasting form. It's a big difference, right? A lot of times when it comes to the matter of decision-making, we tend to put the criterion, we tend to put this sign of how to make a decision in terms of how the people of the dunya make decisions. Versus this is completely wrong. When it comes, to the difference of the believer and non-believer, we say a believer makes a decision based on the hereafter. And he reconciles both of the world, this world and the hereafter together. Then he makes a decision. Versus unbeliever, no. He only believes in this world, and that's what Allah gives to him as well. For the believer, you believe in the hereafter. Allah gives the bounties to you, in terms of the hereafter as well. Because we know this world is just like a temporary world, right? It's just a passage point. It's not somewhere that we're going to reside in. So when difficulties comes up, the very first lesson, we have to always look, always have to seek for truth, and we have to stand by it, right? And that brings this topic of perseverance, brings this topic of being patient. They say there are 3 kinds of patience when it comes to the teachings of Islam. Number 1 is patience when you are actually following the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Basically, when you are going through the acts of obedience, you have to be patient. You have to carry it through. You have to follow it through. You cannot just do it for example, a couple of days and say, okay, I'm tired of it. No, you have to carry it through, right? Number 2 is being patient when you are actually facing a situation in which you may actually commit a sin. Being patient meaning trying to control yourself not to go after the sin, right? And then the third one is when the difficulties happens, right? So these 3 different stages. And then again, the same question, does it only happen to us? No, it happens for everybody, believer and non-believer. The stronger the belief, the stronger the test, right? And the stronger of the outcome. So again, why is it so important? Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us all of these tests? It's just to see, or it's just to give us that, greater rewards. They said there are at least 3 reasons for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us those difficulties in life. Number 1, to wash away our sins. Number 2, to elevate our level of faith. And number 3, to extend and give us this new set of bounties in which we were not capable or sufficient for. So all of those happens through this topic of difficulties in life, right? Now, of course, one of the prayers we do, or we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not to give us something that we cannot bear, we cannot tolerate. As they say, everybody has a price, right? Sometimes they come up to me and they ask me, for example, we will give you this X amount of money, right? Let's say, I don't know, $10,000, $20,000, right? For you, for example, to make this false accusation, or, give this false, testify at the court, for example. Do this haram act and we'll pay you X amount of money. So everybody has a price. First they start with 10,000, then they give you 20,000, right? Then all of a sudden they raise the stake and then they say, okay, we'll give you, for example, $1 million, right? And little by little, that shaitan it comes to play. It's like, hey, it's $1 million. You can take this. It's one sin. With $1 million, you can do so much donations. You can do so much ziyarah. You can help so many people, right? Is that true? They say a person who was actually stealing money, that was the reasoning he was using. He was saying, I steal money from my brothers and sisters. That's one sin. Then I use that money and I do a donation. And for every good act, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you 10 extra rewards, right? You take one step, Allah comes in the 10 steps, right? So one sin, that's -1. I do a good act, it comes with, extra 10, that's plus 11. So 11 minus 1, that's 10. So I'm still winning. I'm still gaining a lot, right? It doesn't work that way, right? I wish it was, right? It doesn't work that way, right? That's why we say the mean never justifies the end, right? We cannot just say, okay, with this one small sin, I'm just going to, create the ground for future, better acts and better deeds. No. Sometimes we have to be patient. Sometimes you just have to go through these difficulties with this tolerance. Again, remember from Lady Zainab Salamullah alayha. Her life going through all these different stages, going through all of these calamities of life, right? And mashallah, no matter where, in which, part of this journey, we look at her, the way she actually behaved and the way she led the caravan of the women and children, mashallah, it's almost, it sounds like as an impossible to us. So when we look at her personality, there are different characters that it stands out. Number 1 is her knowledge. As Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam describes, Allahumma salli Lady Zainab, right? He uses this term that you are the knowledgeable one, right? Without being actually taught. This is one of those very, great bounties. All of us, we go to school, we go to different teachers, we go to different books in order to learn. But Imam al-Sajjad, the Imam al-Ma'soom, right? He uses this term for Lady Zainab, right? He says that you are the learned one that has not been thought. Meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted you with this knowledge, right? And you're the one who's well aware of everything without being even trained, right? So that gives that, that perfect sense of perspective. So she sees the haqq, she sees the truth. And that's why we see that, she takes a very strong, stand when it comes to defending that truth, right? That's number one. Number two, her patience. This topic of patience is one of the great characters of the mu'mineen and mu'minat. Whether we want it or not, is part of it. We cannot say, I do not want to go through this journey of being patient and I still want to become a mu'min. No, it's something, as I mentioned, it's for everybody. Sometimes it's very normal stuff, really average daily stuff, right? Sometimes no, it becomes a lot more stronger in terms of to the scale and the level of that testing, right? Number three, which is very important, is the act of obedience towards what? Towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we see here that she absolutely didn't say anything in contrary to what Imam al-Hussein actually was telling her. So we have this again, a very great narrations, right? In which it talks about the night before Ashura. Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salatu wassalam is the next Imam after Imam al-Hussein, right? So he has to get all of these belongings from Imam al-Hussein on the last night. He has to give his farewell to Imam al-Hussein on his last night. But Imam al-Sajjad was sick and was lying on the bed. And who was in charge of him? Lady Zainab salamullah alayha. So when we look at the Maghatil, we see that there was actually no chance, no time for Imam al-Sajjad to actually say one good farewell to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Why? Because they were they were worried about how Lady Zainab would feel about this. And an example of that one happened on the night of Ashura. So Imam al-Sajjad actually narrates this. He says that, I was laying there and I was at my bed and Lady Zainab was there. She was attending my, she was helping me out in a sense, right? Then Abu Abdullah al-Hussein came to our tent and he was trying to find a perfect spot or perfect timing in order to have a personal conversation with me. But it didn't happen. So what did Imam al-Hussein do? He went to his own tent. Those who have gone to Khaymegah, they know these two tents are actually interconnected with each other, right? So he goes to his tent and he pretends that he's repairing his weapons and he's cleaning up his weapons for the next day. So he starts doing his farewell and he starts talking to me in the language of poem. He starts talking about the dunya. He starts talking about how disloyal of this world is and how many people have put their trust in this dunya and yet again the dunya has betrayed them. Imam al-Sajjad says the minute he started reciting the poem, I got the message that this is the goodbye from Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. But Lady Zainab hears the very same poem and she gets the message as well. She has the very same knowledge, right? So we have it in the narration that immediately she gets up. She goes to the tent of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. As she's walking, her chador is actually dragging on the floor. She didn't have enough time to actually, lift up her chador to make sure that, she goes and she attends she goes in a perfect motion, right? So she goes immediately to Imam al-Hussein and she starts mourning right there. She says, "Oh Abu Abdullah, are you talking about departure? Are you talking about a farewell? So far I have lost my grandfather, so far I have lost my parents, so far I have lost my brother. And you are the remaining of all of that. You are the supporter of all of that. And you're talking about a farewell to me?" Then Imam al-Hussein turns around and tells her, be patient, my dear sister, right? This is the path that is for everybody. This path of going through this dunya, this path of going through all of these difficulties and calamities for everybody. Then he gives him some recommendation. He gives her some recommendation about after what's going to happen. And he calls her to be patient and patient. The reason we call her, we label her al-Masa'ib, right? It's literally any possible given calamities you can think of, Lady Zainab actually probably went through. From seeing and witnessing all of the stuff that happened on the day of Ashura, if that is not enough, continue on this path from, going from Karbala to Kufa, from Kufa all the way to Sham. And we know they did not make it easy. As they were about to enter the city of Sham, right? So we have it that Kulthum, she actually raises this question to Shamr. She tells them, you guys have brought us all the way to Sham while, this beloved head of Shuhada were among us. So no matter how, or no matter when we looked up, we would see the beloved head of one of the Shuhada. At least do us this favor, now that we are entering the city, number one, take us from this gate, which is not as popular, and number two, make sure that this beloved head goes a little bit further, a little bit ahead of us, so people would take a look at those heads. They would not look at us directly in our eyes, in our faces. And Shaykh Ibn Joshan, what does he do? He does exactly opposite. He orders them to be actually taken to this gate in which they call it the gate of Sa'a, the gate of watch. And he tells them to make them wait there and make the announcement. Make the announcement for all the people to gather around. Make the announcement for all of those singers to come out, and let's make a very big scene in terms of celebrating of what is going to happen and who is about to enter the city. To the point that, you guys know the story. This older guy, he comes up, he approaches them, and he starts doing a praise like, Alhamdulillah for taking care of your affairs in a way that Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah for showing your true faces. Imam Sajjad, immediately turns around. It's like, do you recite the Quran? Have you read this verse of, for example, the ayah of Tathir? Have you read this verse of the verse of Mawaddat? The older guy says yes, I have. I actually memorized the entire Quran. It's like, okay, so who's the example of all of these verses? This topic of Jahiliyyah, ignorance. Sometimes we just do everything out of habit. No, we have to break those habits. Every act we do, we have to do it with complete sense of awareness, inshallah. So the life of Lady Zainab Salamullah Alaiha can be actually a perfect role model for a lot of us. Not only for sisters, for brothers and sisters, right? So inshallah we can spend more time, we can read her history, we can read her biography, we can read about her characters and how actually she behaved in this journey. Right? And not only Lady Zainab, mashallah, you see all the women and children, Bibi Sakina, Bibi Ruqayya, every single one of them. It's very interesting in the wreckage of Sham, right? So imagine after all of this, you get placed in a place in which doesn't protect you from the cold of the winter or the heat of the summer, right? As if there is nothing there. There is no perfect roof. There is nothing there to actually accommodate you. So they give them some food. So if you have it that Bibi Sukaina, she would actually go and pick out the best of the foods, right? She put it on a tray and she would take it, on the side of the wreckage of the Sham, right? And she would hand this to the kids who were playing around. Why? She would use this as an excuse just to tell them the message of Ashura, right? Now, if something happens to us, if God forbid something happens to us in our community, right? Will we do the same thing? If one of our beloved one, something happens to him or her, he or she gets killed in the community in which we live in, do we ever go back to that community, or do we just move out to a new community? And we make all these negative comments about the community that we were in, right? Now, when we take a look at Lady Zainab Salamullah Alaiha, she never nagged about any of this stuff. She actually were trying to elaborate and explain what the truth is, as if nothing has happened, right? And was completely in a sense of obedience when it comes to accepting the haqq. So inshallah we can take that as a lesson, and we can start saying our salams to Lady Zainab Salamullah Alaiha and Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن العادل وعلى أصحاب It's been reported that when Lady Zainab was a young kid, she sees and she has this dream. And then she goes to Rasulullah and she tells her dream to Rasulullah. She tells him, "Oh grandfather, I had this dream and I saw this strong wind started blowing so hard that the entire place around me became dark. So I hold on to this tree which was close to me and I hold on to it very tightly. But that wind was so strong that it removed the tree and it left me all alone. So I grabbed onto some of the branches of the tree. I hold on to this branch, but that wind broke that branch. I hold on to a second branch, but the wind again broke that branch as well. So I hold on to these two branches which was actually intertwined together and they were merged together, but the wind actually broke those two branches as well. What's the meaning of this dream, O Rasulullah? We have it in that report that Rasulullah starts crying for Lady Zainab. And he tells her, "Oh my dear one, your dream, what you have seen, talks about the tragedies in which you go through. That tree that you saw in your dream is me, that you will actually go through the suffering of pain of losing me in a couple of years. The first branch that you hold on to is your mother, Lady Fatima Zahra. The second branch which you hold on to is your father, Amir al-Mu'mineen. Those two branches which you try to hold on to are your brothers, Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein. Lady Zainab, be patient and be patient as you go through this test and these calamities in which you'll be always wearing black and you will always be mourning for the Ahlul Bayt of Rasulullah." As I mentioned, the sawab of crying for Lady Zainab equals to the sawab of crying for Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein together. They say on the path to Karbala, at one of the places that the caravan was resting, Imam al-Hussein went and disappeared for a couple of hours. The very first person who came out and was looking for Imam al-Hussein was Lady Zainab salamullah alayha. And she was going from one tent to another tent asking to see where's Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. After a couple of hours, Imam al-Hussein appeared and he came and he actually went to his tent. Then when Lady Zainab raised the question that, "Where have you been, oh my dear brother?" Imam al-Hussein says, "I actually had to stop by Najaf to give my regards and my salam to my father Amir al-Mu'mineen one last time before we actually go towards Karbala." This connection between Lady Zainab and Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, such a strong connection. Now imagine on the day of Ashura, as she is going on the Tall of Zainabiyya and she's looking down at the Qatlegah, she sees the body of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein laying there on the plains of Karbala, and she sees that Umar Asad is ordering Shabr ibn Zaljoshan to go and finish up Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. She is looking as she sees Shabr ibn Zaljoshan getting closer and closer to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. What's happening with her heart? How will she feel when she sees Shem sitting on the chest of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein? Assalamu alayka ya Zainab, Assalamu alayka ya Zainab. She says, "Oh, what's going on here? Is there any Muslim among you? How come nobody's doing and doesn't have any mercy?" Lady Zainab salamullah alayha had to do two last will of Lady Fatima Zahra. Lady Fatima Zahra told her specifically, when the day comes, make sure you give two kisses to Imam al-Hussein. Number one, kiss his neck, and number two, kiss his chest. Oh, Lady Zainab, did you give a kiss to the neck of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein? Yes, oh mother, I carried your will. I gave a kiss to the neck of Imam al-Hussein, but that neck was actually severed and taken apart by Shabr ibn Zaljoshan. Oh, Lady Zainab, did you give a last kiss to the chest of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein? Oh mother, oh Lady Zahra, I did that will as well, but that chest became trampled over by horses, and all of the bones of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein got broken into pieces and pieces. Oh, inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Let's go to the day of Arba'in, when the caravan goes back to the Qatlegah, when Lady Zainab goes back to pay one last visit to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. How would she feel when she goes back to the grave of her beloved one, Imam al-Hussein? How would she say, how would she give the reports? Oh, Imam al-Hussein, where were you when they were taking us to Sham? When were you when they were actually heading up with the spears on the side? Where were you when they were actually taking us through the cities after cities? Where were you when we had to actually face Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad and Yazid? Let's say one more last salam to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and nas'aluka ad-du'a ajma'in. Assalamu alayka ya Abu Abdullah وعلى الأرواح التي هلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على وعلى علي بن وعلى أولاد وعلى أصحاب اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم إلهي بحق محمد وعلي وفاطمة والحسن والحسين وتسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين يا الله 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 يا Allah. Oh Allah, we'll ask you to hasten the appearance of our Imam Zaman. Oh Allah, we'll ask you humbly to give us the tawfiq to be part of his true companions. Oh Allah, we'll ask you for forgiveness of all of our past sins. Oh Allah, we'll ask you for forgiveness for all of our past ones. Oh Allah, we'll ask you humbly to give us the tawfiq of the ziyarat of Abu Abdullah in this world and his intercession and shafa in the hereafter. Oh Allah, we'll ask you humbly to cure all of our sick ones. Oh Allah, we'll ask you humbly to remove all the difficulties from our life. Oh Allah, oh Allah, oh Allah, on such a beloved nights, we'll ask you humbly to accept this majalis from us and to give and provide our life the life of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad and to put our death a death of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa Ali Muhammad.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, I'm Zainab. All my life I've lived in pain. I'm Zainab. I died when I lost Hussein. I'm Zainab. All my life I lived in pain. I'm Zainab. I died when I lost Hussein. I'm Zainab. All my life I lived in pain. I'm Zainab. I died when I lost Hussein. I'm Zainab. All my life I lived in pain. I'm Zainab. I died when I lost Hussein. I am the mother of sorrows. Wherever I go, woe follows. I am the mother of sorrows. Wherever I go, woe follows. I'm Zainab. All my life I lived in pain. I'm Zainab. I died when I lost Hussein. I'm Zainab. All my life I lived in pain. I'm Zainab. I died when I lost Hussein. My grief started when I lost mankind's true mercy. My grief started when I lost mankind's true mercy. After that loss, I lost Zahra and then Ali. My grief started when I lost mankind's true mercy. After that loss, I lost Zahra and then Ali. The broken rib, the struck head of Ali haunts me. My grief deep in seeing Hussein dying slowly. How can I now live without you, my dear? How can I see your head shine on a spear? How can I live now without you, my dear? How can I see your head shine on a spear? I am the mother of sorrows. Wherever I go, woe follows. I am the mother of sorrows. Wherever I go, woe follows. I'm Zainab. All my life I lived in pain. I'm Zainab. I died when I lost Hussein. I'm Zainab. I died my life, I lived in pain. I'm Zainab. I died when I lost Hussein. My heart was shattered on the day Hussein was killed. The day of 10th when the whole world with blood was filled. Upon my mind sorrow and pain was instilled. O Lord, let our small sacrifice be now fulfilled. O Shia, when you're thirsty, say his name. O Shia, curse the one who lit the flame. O Shia, when you're thirsty, say his name. O Shia, curse the one who lit the flame. I am the mother of sorrows. Wherever I go, woe follows. I am the mother of sorrows. Wherever I go, woe follows. I'm Zainab. All my life I lived in pain. I'm Zainab. I died when I lost Hussein. I'm Zainab. All my life I lived in pain. I'm Zainab. I died when I lost Hussein. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى. السلام عليك يا حسين بن علي يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين أيها الزين العابدين. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر. السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق. السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي أيها الجواد. السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي أيها العسكري. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان. الأمان الأمان الأمان. العجل العجل العجل. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Let's recite the dua faraj all together. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
Thank you, brothers and sisters. Inshallah, we'll continue with our programs tomorrow evening. If you'd like to ask any other questions or get in contact with the Sheikh Ehsan, please come up and speak to him now. Inshallah, he will be speaking at another location, inshallah, starting tomorrow night. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.